The rooftop terrace of the Langham Hotel in Boston should have felt like a dream. 70 guests, string lights draped between potted birch trees, and the skyline glowing amber behind us like the city itself was celebrating. My rehearsal dinner, the night before I was supposed to marry the man standing 20 feet away, laughing with his groomsmen, his hand resting on his mother's shoulder like she was his date instead of me. I smoothed the front of my ivory cocktail dress and took a sip of Prosecco. My best friend Marin caught my eye from across the terrace and mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded, but something felt off. A low hum in my chest I couldn't name, like the moment before a fire alarm goes off when the air already smells wrong. "My name is Sophia. I'm a trauma surgeon at Massachusetts General. I've held people's hearts in my hands, literally, and kept them beating. I've worked 90-hour weeks since residency. I bought my own condo in Back Bay at 29, with money I earned cutting people open and stitching them back together. I met Ethan Caldwell at a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital 2 years ago. He was charming, steady, easy to be around. He worked in brand strategy for a consulting firm. His family had been in New England since before it was a cliché. Old money, quiet money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. I loved him. I want that to be clear before everything else. I loved the way he brought me coffee during my overnight shifts. I loved the way he remembered the names of my patients' kids. I loved that he never once made me feel like my job was too much, too intense, too unfeminine. That's what made what happened next so hard to believe. Victoria Caldwell stood up, my future mother-in-law. She was 62, silver-haired, and had the kind of posture that suggested she'd been balancing books on her head since birth. She tapped her champagne flute with a dessert fork, and the terrace went quiet the way rooms always went quiet for Victoria. Not because she demanded it, but because refusing felt socially impossible. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying that old Boston polish. "Tomorrow, our Ethan marries a remarkable woman. A surgeon. A healer. Someone who has dedicated her life to saving others." She smiled at me. Warm. Practiced. And that's exactly why I'm so thrilled about what comes next. I felt Ethan shift beside me. His hand found mine under the table and squeezed. I squeezed back. "As many of you know," Victoria continued, "the Caldwell Foundation has been our family's heartbeat for 3 generations. My mother-in-law built it. I've spent 30 years growing it, and now, with Sophia joining our family, I'm delighted to announce that she has agreed to step into the role of Foundation Director, overseeing our health equity initiatives full-time." The terrace erupted in polite applause. I didn't move. My hand went cold inside Ethan's grip. I had never agreed to anything. We had discussed, casually, over wine one night months ago, the idea of me consulting for the foundation on weekends. Maybe reviewing grant proposals. A hobby-level commitment, not a career change, not full-time, not quitting surgery. Victoria wasn't finished. Of course, this means Sophia will be transitioning away from the hospital. We all know how grueling surgical schedules are, hardly compatible with the demands of family life and foundation work. She looked at me with a benevolent smile that made my skin crawl. But I have no doubt she'll find this new chapter even more fulfilling. After all, healing a community is just as noble as healing a patient. Silence from me. The applause faded into an awkward murmur. Marin's face across the terrace was frozen in horror. Ethan's hand was still holding mine, but his grip had loosened. I looked at him. He was staring at his plate. "Ethan," I said quietly. Just to him. "Did you know she was going to say that?" He didn't answer immediately. That half-second delay told me everything. "She mentioned she might bring it up," he murmured. I told her to keep it vague. Keep it vague. Not don't say it. Not that's not true. Keep it vague. I stood up. My chair didn't screech. It barely made a sound on the stone terrace. But everyone noticed. Victoria's smile flickered. I looked at her directly. "Victoria, thank you for that generous introduction," I said. My voice the same calm, clinical tone I use when I'm telling a patient's family that the next 48 hours are critical. I should clarify something for everyone here. I haven't agreed to leave my position at Mass General. I'm a surgeon. That's not a phase I'm transitioning out of. It's who I am. The silence that followed was surgical. Victoria's composure cracked for a fraction of a second before resetting. Of course, dear. We can discuss the details privately. I may have gotten ahead of myself. You did, I said. Then I sat down. The rest of the dinner was a performance. Smiles stretched too thin. Conversations that circled the moment without touching it. Ethan said nothing to me for 45 minutes. When he finally leaned over, his words were careful and hollow. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone. She's embarrassed. She should be, I said. She announced a career I didn't choose. It wasn't an announcement. It was an aspiration. She's excited about you joining the family. Joining the family doesn't require surrendering my career. He exhaled through his nose. A sound I'd heard before but never directed at me. Frustration. Dismissal. Can we not do this tonight, please? We're getting married tomorrow. I looked at his face. The face I'd chosen. And for the first time, I saw someone who had been rehearsed, not just for this dinner, but for his entire life. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my hotel room at the Langham, still in my dress, scrolling through my phone. Not for comfort, for information. 3 months ago, Ethan had asked me to sign a prenuptial agreement. His family's request, he said. Standard for families with generational wealth. I'd agreed because I had nothing to hide. My assets were mine. His were his. The prenup was supposed to protect both of us. I'd signed it in his family's attorney's office. A man named Gerald Ashworth, silver-haired, old guard, who'd been the Caldwell family's lawyer since before Ethan was born. The document was 47 pages. I'd read it, or I thought I had, but there were sections that referenced Massachusetts trust law and charitable entity structures that I'd skimmed. Trusting Ashworth's summary. Standard protections, he'd assured me. Boilerplate language. At 2 a.m, I called Marin. She answered on the first ring as if she'd been waiting. I need you to read something, I said. You're a contracts attorney. I need you to read my prenup. I've been wanting to read that thing since you signed it, she said. Send it over. I emailed her the PDF. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Sophia. Marin's voice was different. Tight. Controlled. The voice she used in depositions. Where did you sign this? Ashworth's office. Why? Did you have your own attorney review it? No. Ethan said it was straightforward. His family's lawyer walked me through it. A long pause. There's a clause in Section 14. It's buried in the charitable trust provisions. If you divorce within the first 7 years, any assets acquired during the marriage, including your salary, your savings growth, your retirement contributions, are subject to a foundation recapture provision. Essentially, 60% of your marital earnings get redirected into the Caldwell Foundation. The room tilted. That's not possible. He said it was a standard prenup. There's nothing standard about this. This is a financial leash. You work, you earn, and if you leave, most of what you made goes into their family charity, which Victoria controls. Marin's voice was razor-edged now. And there's more. Section 22. A non-compete clause. If the marriage dissolves, you're prohibited from working for any hospital or medical institution that has received Caldwell Foundation funding for a period of 3 years. I felt the blood drain from my face. Marin, the Caldwell Foundation funds half the hospitals in New England. I know. They would effectively ban me from practicing medicine in this region. That's exactly what this does. If you leave Ethan, you lose your income and your career in one stroke. Sophia, this isn't a prenup, it's a cage. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from the slow, devastating recognition that every warm smile, every thoughtful coffee delivery, every I support your career, babe had been the bait on a hook I was only now seeing. What do? I whispered. You don't walk down that aisle tomorrow, Marin said. And you come to my office at 8 a.m. We tear this apart. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but the surgeon in me took over. Assess the damage. Prioritize. Act. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Dates, conversations, financial contributions. My condo in Back Bay, purchased 3 years before I met Ethan. My student loans, $200,000 from medical school, which I'd been aggressively paying down. My retirement account. My savings. Then I stopped. My student loans. 6 weeks ago, I'd received a letter from my loan servicer. A strange letter confirming a transfer of servicing rights. I'd called, and a representative told me my loans had been purchased by a private entity. She couldn't disclose the buyer's name. I'd meant to follow up, but between wedding planning and a brutal rotation schedule, I'd let it slide. The dread was instantaneous. I opened my email, searched for the letter, and forwarded it to Marin with a single line. Find out who bought my student debt. At 7 the next morning, my phone exploded. Ethan, Victoria. Ethan's father, Richard, the wedding coordinator. Texts, calls, voicemails, each one escalating in urgency. Ethan, 7:02 a.m. Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you at the altar. Ethan, 7:15 a.m. Hey, you're not at breakfast. Everything okay? Victoria, 7:30 a.m. Sophia, dear, the hair team is waiting for you in the bridal suite. Don't be late. Ethan, 7:45 a.m. Sophie, answer your phone. Victoria, 8:01 a.m. Sophia, this is becoming concerning. Please respond immediately. I was already in Marin's office. She had 2 associates pulling case law. Coffee was untouched and cold. I found the buyer, Marin said, turning her monitor toward me. Your student loans were purchased 6 weeks ago by Beacon Harbor Holdings, LLC. Guess who Beacon Harbor's registered agent is? I already knew. Gerald Ashworth. And the sole member of the LLC? Victoria Caldwell. Marin nodded. Your future mother-in-law now owns your debt. $143,000. If you default, if you miss payments, if you violate any terms, she can accelerate the entire balance. Combined with the prenup provisions, she doesn't just control your career path, she controls your financial survival. The architecture of the trap was elegant in its cruelty. Marry Ethan, give up surgery, run the foundation under Victoria's thumb. Try to leave? Lose 60% of your earnings, get banned from practicing in New England, and face a debt bomb held by the woman you're running from. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, 8:22 a.m. The guests are arriving. Where are you? This isn't funny. I typed back the first message I'd sent him all morning. I'm not coming. The wedding is off. Have your attorney call mine, Marin Chen and Associates. Then I turned off my phone. The next 72 hours were a controlled demolition. Marin filed an emergency motion challenging the prenup's enforceability, citing fraud in the inducement, unconscionability, and failure to disclose material terms. She also filed a complaint with the Massachusetts Attorney General's office regarding the covert acquisition of my student debt by a family member of my fiancé for the purpose of financial coercion. Ethan showed up at my condo that evening. I'd already changed the locks. He stood in the hallway, his tuxedo still on, his bow tie hanging loose. Sophia, please, open the door. I can explain everything. Explain through your attorney, Ethan. I didn't know about the loans, I swear. That was my mother. She does things without telling me. And the prenup? Section 14? The foundation recapture clause? Silence. A long, damning silence. Ashworth said it was standard protection for family assets, he said finally, his voice small. It strips me of my earnings and my career if I leave you. That's not protection. That's a trap. It wasn't supposed to be used. It was just insurance, my mother insisted. Insurance against what? Against me having the freedom to leave? He pressed his forehead against the door. I could hear him breathing. I love you, Sophia. None of this changes that. It changes everything. You watched me sign a document designed to imprison me, and you said nothing. Love doesn't do that. What do you want? his voice cracked. Tell me what you want, and I'll fix it. I want the prenup voided. I want my student loans transferred back to a legitimate servicer. I want a written admission from your family's attorney that he failed to disclose material terms. And I want you to leave. If I do all that, will you come back? No. The word hung between us, separated by 2 inches of oak door. I heard him slide down to the floor. I heard him cry. I didn't open the door. Victoria called Marin's office the next morning. Marin put it on speaker so I could listen. Miss Chen, this is Victoria Caldwell. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding the prenuptial agreement. There's no misunderstanding, Mrs. Caldwell. There's fraud. That's a very serious accusation. It's a very serious prenup. Section 14 alone would make any judge in Suffolk County reach for their gavel. And the student loan acquisition through a shell LLC registered to your family attorney? That's not creative estate planning. That's coercion. A pause. Victoria's voice dropped its polish and went flat. What does she want? Full rescission of the prenuptial agreement. Transfer of the student loan portfolio to a standard federal servicer at current terms. A formal ethics complaint will be filed against Ashworth regardless, but your family's cooperation will be noted. And in return? My client's silence on the details. No press, no social media, no interviews. Another pause. Longer. I'll need to discuss this with Richard. You have 48 hours. After that, we go public, and I promise you, the Globe's investigative team will find this story irresistible. Prominent philanthropic family uses charitable foundation as financial weapon against son's fiancé. That's not a story you recover from. Victoria hung up without another word. The Caldwells folded in 36 hours. The prenup was rescinded. The student loans were transferred back to a federal servicer. Ashworth quietly retired from practice 2 weeks later. No formal announcement. Just a disappeared name from a firm's website. But it wasn't clean. It never is. 3 days after the settlement, I found an envelope slipped under my condo door. No return address. Inside was a single printed page. My medical records from my 3rd year of residency, the year my mother's Alzheimer's diagnosis hit me like a freight train, and I'd sought treatment for acute anxiety and insomnia. Prescribed medication, therapy sessions. All documented. All confidential. A handwritten note was paperclipped to the page. Surgeons with mental health histories face increased scrutiny from hospital credentialing boards. Something to consider before making any public statements. No signature. But the stationery was cream-colored, heavyweight, monogrammed with a small C in the corner. I showed Marin. Her face went hard. This is a HIPAA violation. Someone accessed your protected health information and used it as a threat. This is federal. Can we prove it came from them? The stationery is circumstantial, but we can subpoena Ashworth's communications and the medical records access logs. If anyone in that family or their network pulled your records, there's a digital trail. Do it. The trail led to a medical records clerk at the hospital where I'd done my residency. She'd been paid $4,000 through a Venmo account linked to an assistant at, you guessed it, the Caldwell Foundation. Marin filed a federal complaint. The clerk was terminated. The foundation assistant resigned. Victoria's name was never directly on any communication, but the chain of custody pointed in only one direction. I got a call from Victoria one final time. I let it go to voicemail. Sophia, I underestimated you. That was my mistake. I want you to know that everything I did because I believed you weren't strong enough for this family. I was wrong. You're too strong. That's the problem. My son needed someone who would bend. You don't bend. I respect that now, even if I couldn't before. This is the last you'll hear from me. She was right. It was. Ethan texted me once more, 2 months later. A single line. I'm sorry I wasn't braver. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to a man who had chosen comfort over courage every single time it mattered. The condo in Back Bay sold for more than I paid for it. I used part of the proceeds to pay off the rest of my student loans in full. The weight of that debt, The debt Victoria had tried to weaponize evaporated in a single wire transfer. I stood in my empty condo, the walls stripped bare, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Light. Marin and I had lunch the following week. She slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" "A proposal for a nonprofit, legal education and advocacy for people who get blindsided by predatory prenuptial agreements. Financial abuse disguised as family tradition. I've been drafting it since the night you called me from the Langham." I opened it. The name on the cover page was Clear Terms Initiative. "We provide free legal reviews of prenups and cohabitation agreements," Marin explained. "We run workshops on financial literacy for people entering marriages with wealth disparities, and we maintain a pro bono legal team for people who discover, after the fact, that they've signed something designed to trap them." I looked at her. "You've been working on this for 2 months? Someone had to. You were busy winning a war." I laughed, a real laugh, the first one in a long time. We filed the incorporation papers the next week. I made one more financial decision that surprised even Marin. Victoria's rescission settlement had included a payment, a significant one, framed as reimbursement for wedding expenses. I donated every cent of it to the Clear Terms Initiative's operating fund, their money funding the dismantling of their playbook. There was a poetic justice in that I didn't need to explain to anyone. 6 months later, I was back in the operating room, a 12-hour cardiac surgery. My hands steady, my mind clear. The patient survived. I walked out into the dawn light of a Boston morning, stripped off my surgical cap, and checked my phone. A message from Marin. "Globe wants to do a feature on Clear Terms. They're calling it The Prenup You Didn't Read. Interested?" I typed back. "Set it up." As I walked to my car, I passed a couple on the sidewalk. Young, holding hands, laughing about something stupid and wonderful. The woman's ring caught the early light. I didn't feel envy. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt the quiet, steady certainty of a woman who had learned, at the highest possible cost, that the most important contract you ever sign is the one you make with yourself. The one that says, "I will not be diminished. I will not be managed. I will not trade my power for the illusion of love." My phone buzzed again. A notification from the hospital's internal board. Dr. Sophia Reeves, nominated for Chief of Trauma Surgery. Vote pending. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove toward the rest of my life. Nobody else's, mine.